In today's video, I'm going to be picking every single ACC football game for the 2025 football season, as usual, using this beautiful website, Playoff Predictors, that lays out every single game for the 2025 season just for me to pick. And so I'll start with the disclaimer that I always start with in these types of videos, which is I'm picking every single game. And so I'm not going to have the same crazy in-depth analysis for every single one, especially if it's a game like Duke at Elon or any of these FCS matchups that don't require much thought to go into them. You can see the records update over here when I select these games. This is the final Power 5 or Power 4, Old Habits Die Hard, conference that I'm going to be doing. So if you haven't watched any of those other ones and you want to, they're up on my YouTube, they're up on my TikTok as well, but YouTube, they might be a little bit more organized and easier to find. I'll be uploading this video to both YouTube and TikTok. Without further ado, let's get into it. We've got some fun non-conference matchups in the ACC, and you'll see that in just a second. Stanford at Hawaii. Stanford opened up as a 3-point favorite in this one. This is a Week 0 game, but the line has shifted. Hawaii is now the favorites, and I absolutely love that. I was probably rocking with them even when they were underdogs, but Stanford, a lot of dysfunction, some offseason drama. Hawaii, a team to really like, and to get a power conference victory here would be really great for their program, a signature win under Timmy Chang. East Carolina at NC State, a rematch from that bowl game. NC State loses to who they consider to be their little brother. So this one's got a lot of intrigue here. I do like NC State at home. I'm hoping to make it out to this game. It would be my first home game I've been to for the Wolfpack. I think that'd be a total blast, and it'll be the first game I'm at this season most likely. So I think that's going to be a great time. Kennesaw State at Wake Forest. Don't have a ton of faith in Kennesaw State this year. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the FBS, and Wake Forest, not a team I'm super high on either, but I think they take care of business at home. The home opener under Jake Dickert, launching the Jake Dickert era. Georgia Tech at Colorado, it's one of those games I covered in the Big 12 video. In fact, that's true for any power conference, non-conference game, so maybe I might not go as in-depth as I would have in that other video, but I'll still talk about them. Like with Colorado, they're going to be breaking in a new quarterback in either Caden Salter or Juju Lewis. It depends. We still don't know. They're going to have a lot of new. They need some new defensive players to step up as well. Georgia Tech has the continuity to like, and they've got a lot that they're bringing back. So I like the Yellow Jackets there. We've got Tennessee versus Syracuse at a neutral site in Atlanta. South Carolina, Virginia Tech is another one that is in Atlanta. I've gone back and forth on that one a little bit, but I do at the end of the day think Tennessee, with their superior talent level, will take over. I do think people are too low on Syracuse, and I do think people are too high on Tennessee, so it creates a little bit of intrigue there. Bama, Florida State, I just tweeted out this stat the other day, but basically a top 10 team has lost to an unranked team in Week 1 or Week 0 every single year since 2021. So the last 4 seasons, last year it was Florida State versus Georgia Tech, and in every case, the top 10 team has been away from home. There's only one game that fits that criteria this year, and that's Bama against Florida State. So pretty scary, pretty sketchy if you're Alabama. I would not like to be traveling on the road in a newly renovated stadium versus a program that was just down, coming off a rough year, going to be amped up. I'm going to take Alabama there, but still a bit of a sketchy game if you're the Crimson Tide. Coastal Carolina at Virginia. Tony Elliott and the Cavaliers have a ton of continuity to like. In fact, Elliott said at ACC Media Days his staff has not changed since his first season, which I knew the coordinators hadn't. But to learn the whole staff, that's pretty impressive. And Coastal Carolina has a lot of new. I do like the hires they made. I think they have a great staff under Tim Beck, but I don't know if it's going to instantly click, especially on the road versus a power conference opponent that I do like. Shout out Chandler Morris. We got LSU at Clemson, big-time non-conference matchup, one of the biggest ones. Another one I hope to be at. Tickets are pretty nuts for that one, though, right now. I do like Clemson. Oh, I accidentally just picked Florida State. Might be the kiss of death for Alabama there. I like Clemson at home. LSU's had those early season struggles, and I just think the Tigers have a little bit more certainty. I like a lot of the things they did. Maybe there's a scenario where LSU can get them, but they're going to have to bring their A game, that's for sure. LSU sparked that other year in 2019 where they had a pretty great season. Don't know if you can remember that one with a big non-conference victory. So potentially an opportunity to do that again. And I believe that one was on the road versus Texas as well. So could be a very similar thing if they're able to get that done. Cal at Oregon State, non-conference matchup. Oregon State 3-point favorites at home, so they're telling you this would be a pick'em at a neutral site. 2 evenly matched teams. I actually like the Beavs at home. I think they did a lot of really great things this offseason, and Cal is a team that had a little bit of turmoil in that spring transfer portal window. They're still a talented team. I still like their defense, and we'll talk about them definitely a lot more in this video, but I like the Beavs at home. Neutral site game. This one should be a lot of fun. Lenora Sellers versus Kyron Drones. I think they're going to duel. I think it's going to be fun. I think South Carolina is just going to make more plays defensively at the end of the day and get the job done. Notre Dame at Miami, Catholics versus Convicts. Such a fun matchup to think about and look at. I haven't picked this one yet. in one of these videos because Notre Dame, I haven't really picked their season yet because they're an independent team and they didn't fit into any of the other 3 conferences. I think they're going to have the best quarterback they've had in a Marcus Freeman and CJ Carr. I think there's going to be a lot there. Miami performed so well to start the season and so well in the non-conference under Cristobal. I'm tempted to pick them here, but I do think there's going to be some growing pains for that Corey Heatherman defense. So Notre Dame might run all over them. I think they win in a shootout in that one. TCU at North Carolina, Bill Belichick's home opener at Chapel Hill. That's a lot of fun. Another game I hope to make it to, hoping to just absolutely pack my weekend, that opening weekend, and all those games are pretty close to each other. Give me Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels to get the job done at home. I actually think their defense is going to be really far along by the time week 1 comes along. James Madison at Louisville. Trap game for Louisville at home against one of the top Sun Belt contenders. I still think Jeff Brom's squad pulls it together. Miller Moss, I think, is going to look crisp out the gate. And the Cardinals' tried and true system is going to shine through at the start of the season. We've got a few FCS games in here that we can pick the home teams for. No offense to Troy. I'm just not seeing Jared Parker's squad getting it done at Clemson. Illinois at Duke is a really fun non-conference matchup that's being overlooked a little bit. Not the biggest brands, but 2 teams that won 9+ games last season and had really impressive years. I think Duke is being a little underrated by myself and a lot of other people. Sounds a little hypocritical, but I am starting to come around in the Blue Devils, and you'll probably see that reflected in this video a little bit. I think they pull off the upset victory. They've got an underrated defense with Chandler Rivers and the guys they have there, and then I love Darian Mensah and the pieces they have on the other side of the football. So really liking Duke at home against Illinois. Virginia, NC State is a non-conference game between conference opponents, just one of the side effects of recent conference realignment. I actually really like the continuity Virginia has, and NC State is going to have a lot of new this year and a lot of new pieces and a lot of new parts, and Dave Doran trying to just jerry-rig his way to getting this team back on track. I'm going to trust what I'm more familiar with, and that's what this Virginia system is and the progression they've had. They've got the continuity in the staff. They have a little less continuity from their players on the roster, but I think they made a lot of good moves. So I'm not even too low on NC State. I just think this is a game where Virginia early in the season, that continuity could really work in their favor, and that clear identity could help them get a nice road victory. Give me Pitt at home against Matt Drinkle's Central Michigan squad. Baylor at SMU, a big-time non-conference game. Look for this to be kind of a wake-up call for SMU, taking an early loss against a Baylor team that has got a lot of dudes on their team. They really figured out that offense late in the year last year, and I think the Aranda defense is going to come around. SMU, a team maybe that's going to realize they don't quite have the defensive juice that they had last year that pulled them through some of those early games, especially when their offense was sputtering early in the season last year. UConn at Syracuse. I really like Jim Mora's Huskies this year, but I like Syracuse to bounce back and get a victory at home. Still a great system offensively, obviously, and I trust the coaching staff. So I think Syracuse is going to just find ways to be better than people think they'll be. It's hilarious. We're sending Bill Belichick on the road to play Charlotte to open like his first road game as a head coach. That's honestly incredible that we were able to make that happen. He'll get the win there. I like Jonathan Smith and the Spartans at home against Boston College. I really think they're going to be a lot better in year 2, and the Eagles did bite them last year, but Boston College has got a lot they need to figure out. On paper, they do not look too great right now, but because of their schedule, maybe they'll be able to squeeze some victories out. I think Virginia Tech gets revenge at home, so back-to-back revenge games basically, and back-to-back wins for the team trying to get revenge. I think Lane Stadium's just a much tougher place to play. That's obviously not a hot take, but I think in this case they'll pull out a win versus Vanderbilt and avenge that overtime loss they took early in the year last year at home. Stanford at BYU, an interesting inner power conference matchup, but not too interesting. Both teams did deal with some offseason drama, but BYU still has a much more complete team around them than Stanford does. So that drops Stanford to an 0-2 start. Let's get to week 3, where we've got some matchups here. NC State at Wake Forest, Jake Dickert's squad at home, this one on a Thursday. Don't know if I trust that too much, though, because I know that the dates that were listed were wrong with some of the other conferences, so take that with a grain of salt. I'll probably stop calling out those days in that case. NC State at Wake Forest. I like NC State. In this one, Wake Forest is a team that I think is going to be struggling in a transition year this year. They did do a lot, and they went for a lot, but they're probably going to be starting Robbie Ashford at quarterback, and I just am not really crazy about that. And a couple other things. I also don't love that Alex Grinch is their defensive coordinator. So just not crazy about their staff, not crazy about their talent level, and I think this is one where NC State, with a little bit more certainty, CJ Bailey returning, some of those defenders they've got, they did overhaul quite a bit. Like I said, Doran trying out a lot of new stuff, but I like them in that one. Clemson at Georgia Tech, a tough trap game for them early in the season. I think Georgia Tech is a great team. I think they're going to be in a great position. Could they knock off the Tigers? Absolutely. Am I going to pick them to beat Clemson early in the year? I guess I am. I guess I am. You know what? I'm going to rock with Georgia Tech there. I wasn't sure until I clicked it. SMU at Missouri State is hilarious. I love the fact that we got a team that was just in the playoffs to go on the road versus a team that was an FCS program last year. So shout out to Missouri State for scheduling hard in the non-conference. I still like SMU. Pitt at West Virginia, the backyard brawl, going to be cinema, going to be awesome. It's always a good time. I believe in the Big 12 video, I actually can't even remember who I picked in this one. Maybe I rocked with Rich Rod and company at home. I wish I could remember because I would go with my former pick. But I think I picked an upset victory for West Virginia at home. Pitt is a very talented team. I think they're a good team. Rivalry game, though, emotions are riding high. I think West Virginia exacts their revenge in that one. South Florida at Miami. Big-time non-conference matchup for the Bulls, a chance to maybe catapult themselves into the playoff conversation. I think Miami gets the win. In this case, they'd already have a loss, but a lot of good things that are coming along there. I think Beck going to start to get settled in more. They've got a lot of shiny new pieces. I talked about Heatherman's defense earlier. I think they'll start to gel further. Old Dominion's been known to pull off some surprises in the non-conference, but in this case, Virginia Tech at home, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll get the win after splitting those SEC games they played. Duke at Tulane is a lot of fun because it's Darian Mensah's return to Tulane, and sometimes things are just like bigger than football, it feels like, and for Mensah and against Tulane, it feels like there's going to be a lot of bad blood there, and this is a tough place to play, and so even though I was hyping up Duke earlier, I just picked him to beat Illinois. I think Tulane can step up to the task and pull off an upset victory here. So maybe we just see a chain reaction of Duke upsetting a ranked Illinois and then Tulane upsetting a ranked Duke. We've seen stuff like that happen in the early season. Tulane's no joke. I think they're going to be great, and they just landed Jake Retzloff as well, who could be the quarterback, but even if he's not, I love Caden Simonza. I think Donovan Leary could be a great option, and so could Brendan Sullivan. So Tulane's got a lot of options and a lot of talent for a Group of 5 program. Boston College traveling early in the season to play Stanford. The Farm is kind of a tough place to play, and I did talk about there's a little bit of dysfunction, but especially after a couple tough non-conference losses, I think Stanford at home can step up and get it done. That's a long distance to travel if you're Boston College, and we're looking at some of their early traveling. They have to travel from Boston to Michigan and then from Boston to Stanford, 2 physical opponents as well. I think they take that early loss. Minnesota at Cal in the non-con. I think Minnesota gets the job done. A team I trust a lot more than the Golden Bears just on paper, even with Cal's recent nice performances in the non-conference, including that win they got against Auburn last season. Syracuse on the road versus Clemson. See, these ones all say they're Friday. Definitely not the case. So we'll just rock with this. Syracuse at Clemson. Clemson at home. I think it's what in this case would be a bounce-back victory, their first ACC victory against a Syracuse team that's obviously got a lot to replace this season. NC State at Duke. I like the Blue Devils as the home team. They don't have too crazy of a home field advantage. This isn't too far of a distance for NC State to travel, but again, talking about the new pieces that the Wolfpack are having to break in early in the season, could be a struggle for them to get it out the gate. Kent State, going to be one of the worst teams in the FBS this year, perhaps the worst. Temple, I think, could also have some early struggles with their new head coach, Casey Keeler, so I like Florida State, Georgia Tech at home, and we'll also pick Virginia Tech over Wofford, no offense to Wofford. SMU at TCU, an awesome rivalry game, going to be super heated, was super heated last year, and we watched Sonny Dykes get literally ejected in that one, emotions running high. I definitely know I split these games for SMU before when I was picking the Big 12 games. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think perhaps I had SMU winning at home and losing on the road, but why not? Let's pick the weirdness. SMU beats TCU again this year in a high-scoring, just absolutely wild game, one of the wildest games of the year. North Carolina has to travel to play UCF on the road. I'm fairly certain that I was rocking with the Tar Heels when I picked this one in the other video, and I'm going to continue to do so. Florida at Miami. I think this is one where the Gators could get caught in a tough spot and lose. They've got a tough early schedule to start next season, and so I'm taking Miami in that one. Again, just some big fun non-conference games. We're in week 4 and we're still talking about those. Stanford at Virginia. Talked about the Cavaliers continuity. It's a word I've used 1,000 times when talking about them, but it's something I truly do believe in. And at home, I think they can get a win over a Stanford team that in this case would be 1-3, but 1-1 in conference. Give me Louisville at home, another Group of 5 team in the non-conference. And then we got Cal at San Diego State. Could be a sketchy game for them, but San Diego State was not a very good team last year. They could have some growing pains again, so give me Cal to get their second victory. Florida State at Virginia. This one is really intriguing. At this point, I would have Virginia at 4-0, playing host to a Florida State team that is undoubtedly going to be more talented than Virginia, but have they fixed all of the issues from last year? I don't know if there's any way to know that. I know that they'll probably be a better coach team with Tony White and with Gus Malzahn. But again, when you're talking about continuity versus not, in the preseason, in the offseason, when we're looking at this and we don't have a tangible sample size, and I haven't been able to see Florida State come out the gate and look great versus Bama and then dominate those other two opponents, I'm going to rock with Virginia on paper. And so that's them getting off to a 5-0 start, which I think could happen and is pretty crazy. Cal at Boston College, I think the Eagles get a bounce-back victory at home. Again, long distance to travel. Cal has a lot of traveling they got to do, although that's actually solid in terms of their first other ones. I believe it's Stanford I'm thinking about. I'll show off their schedule in just a second. Virginia Tech at NC State. Interesting matchup. Virginia Tech, another team that is breaking in a lot of newness. I think NC State, in this case, the home field advantage comes through. They get the victory. Louisville at Pitt, tough early game for both these squads. I like Pitt a lot this year in terms of what they bring to the table. Even though I know I picked against them in the backyard brawl, I think that's just some rivalry craziness that would occur. That would be a huge victory for Pitt. Probably an upset victory, probably a top 25 win. Duke on the road versus Syracuse. Again, Fran Brown's team, I think, going to cause a lot of the chaos in this conference. Hand a loss to the Duke Blue Devils. San Jose State beat Stanford last season. Ken Niumatalolo's squad probably going to be pretty solid this year. I think that they're going to make some improvements even from where they were last year. So maybe something could happen here. Maybe Stanford gets upset. I'm still going to rock with them at home. I did pick them to lose to Hawaii. I don't think it's very likely they drop both of those games. So give me Stanford to get win number 2. Georgia Tech at Wake Forest, another one that is kind of intriguing. I still really like Georgia Tech. I'm high on them, obviously. I just picked them to beat Clemson earlier in the video. Been kind of a chaotic, crazy one so far, but just remember this is college football. Miami at Florida State. Can the Noles pull off the upset versus their bitter rivals? I don't think so in this case. Boston College at Pitt. Give me Pitt at home versus a team that I think is just going to be depleted in a lot of areas, specifically on defense. They lost a lot of great players from last season, so give me Pitt. Syracuse at SMU. I think that's too tough of a road test to ask of Syracuse early in the year. Duke at Cal is an intriguing one at first, but not really because I'm much higher on Duke. So ignore the fact that I said it was intriguing at all. Clemson at North Carolina. Clemson, another testy road game early in the year. If they're dropping the one at Georgia Tech, I don't think they're dropping it here, and vice versa. I think there's a chance you see them take care of business versus Georgia Tech and then potentially fall to a North Carolina team that I think will be stout defensively and in a position to pull off some upsets this year. Give me Louisville to end Virginia's undefeated season, a fun Cinderella run for them to get to 5-0. Who knows, maybe they're even a ranked team at that point in the year, but I like Louisville at home. Virginia Tech over a Wake Forest team I'm not feeling too crazy about. We go to week 7. I'm going to take a slight pause for a water break. And then we will resume here in week 7. Clemson at Boston College. Again, another kind of testy road game that could get interesting, but I don't think so in this case. Pitt has to travel to a tough environment to play Florida State. I think this is where Florida State can finally get that first real win of the season to kind of take a deep breath and be like, okay, we're not as bad as we were last year. This gets them to win number 3. This gets them a real home victory. They could be feeling a little stressed if that plays out like I just picked it there. Virginia Tech at Georgia Tech, there's some intrigue. I really like what the Yellow Jackets have altogether. Shout out to Eric Rivers, and I believe Dean Patterson is the other one, the 2 FIU transfers at wide receiver. I think they'll be real difference makers for the Yellow Jackets this year and help them have a really great passing game again this year. Stanford has to travel to play SMU on the road. I like the Mustangs at home on their own home turf there against the Stanford team that I've slandered quite a bit here, but not too much, giving them an ACC win and a couple victories overall. NC State at Notre Dame definitely could be a struggle for them. They're going to be outmatched. I like Notre Dame this year, and so give me the Fighting Irish in another game there. Wake Forest has to travel on the road to play Oregon State. This is no joke. This is a tough place to play. It is an Oregon State team that is beatable. They could beat them, but I'm going to rock with the Beavs when they're at home more often than not, and they've had 2 home games versus ACC teams, Cal and Wake Forest in this case, and I just really think they'll take care of business. I've heard the take that Oregon State is the best quarterback on the West Coast in Malik Murphy, and I don't hate that so much. He has a 1,000-yard receiver and 1,000-yard running back coming back, and I think that's going to help boost him this year. Louisville at Miami, a massive conference game in the middle of the year. This one is going to have a huge set of implications for the season. As the home team, I do like Miami. I think they get the job done. Got a lot of faith in Carson Beck and what this offense can do for him and what Shannon Dawson can do for him this season. And so for that reason, I'm picking them there. North Carolina at Cal, another hilarious game to subject Bill Belichick to. And in this case, the weirdness of the season, maybe this is something where it is able to catch North Carolina off guard and Cal's able to steal one here. I talked about I don't hate them too much. I think they have a solid defense, so maybe we see a low-scoring slugfest and Cal pulls out a win. UConn at Boston College. I've talked about the Huskies a little bit. I do like them, and I think Jim Mora is building a solid squad. This one at Boston College, I think it's an underrated place to play. I will give them that. And so maybe it's just too tall of a task for UConn to be consistently marching on the road and beating power conference competition, or to trust them to do that. SMU at Clemson, a pretty big matchup, a rematch of the ACC title game. I've talked about SMU quite a bit. I just don't think they're quite as good as they were last year. So I think they come up short versus Clemson a second time. Georgia Tech traveling to play Duke, the Blue Devils. I think this is where they hand Georgia Tech their first loss of the season. So the Yellow Jackets taking an L there on the road versus Duke. Pitt at Syracuse. This one's been a fun matchup to watch recently as these two teams clash. Give me Syracuse at home with that unique home field advantage, taking out Pitt there. Wazoo at Virginia. Virginia I've talked about. I kind of like the Cavaliers. Washington State's got a weird schedule. They're going to be traveling around. Give me Virginia to get to bowl eligibility through just 7 games, which would be just ridiculous. I believe in this case, they're coming off of a bye even. So just a lot of schedule dynamics working in their favor. I mean, even if you're low on Virginia, the worst you could say is 5-2, maybe 4-3 through 7 games, which 4-3 is still a great spot to be in if you're the Cavaliers, a team that hasn't made a bowl game yet under Tony Elliott. Florida State travels to the Farm to play Stanford. I think the Noles show up ready and motivated to get that win. Cal at Virginia Tech, I think too tall of a task for the Golden Bears. Give me Syracuse, or give me Georgia Tech at home against Syracuse, I should say, to get to win number 7. NC State at Pitt, 2 teams I think in a relatively similar tier in the conference. I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Pitt because of the certainty we have and because of how much better they were last season, although I think the margin's still thin. That's a pretty big swing game. Stanford at Miami. At some point, I'm going to have to pick Stanford in a weird game versus a ranked opponent because Stanford's disease exists, and that is the thing where Stanford, tangibly and historically, there is data to back this up over the last several seasons. They beat teams they're not supposed to beat. Last year, they beat Louisville and Syracuse, and in this case, why not? Give me them over Miami and just, crap storm of weirdness, Stanford to get a win. Virginia at North Carolina in this one. Give me Bill Belichick and company at home to put another dent into Virginia's magical season. Boston College is not beating Louisville on the road. SMU at Wake Forest could be a sketchy game for the Mustangs. Wake Forest, a team without a conference loss thus far, but I like SMU in that case. North Carolina travels to play a Syracuse team that I've talked about the different ways they'll probably push the margins and find ways to get unlikely victories, so give me one there. Boston College won't pull off the upset versus Notre Dame. That one would drop them to 3-6. Tough start to the season. Give me Clemson at home versus Duke. I do like Duke, but not enough to pick them on the road there. Florida State at home to get to win number 5. Georgia Tech at NC State. Could be a trap game for Georgia Tech. Well-coached NC State team. In fact, I'll go ahead and pick them there. Miami at SMU is another big time game. At this point, I've got SMU pinned with a loss in conference, Miami pinned with a loss in conference, so huge game for whoever comes out on top. Give me Miami to get a bounce-back victory after a bizarre loss to Stanford. Give me Pitt to beat Stanford to make things make even less sense after that, because that's just what Stanford does. And then we've got a Virginia team I really like on the road versus Cal, where Cal comes through again. You know, the Golden Bears, I give them quite a bit of slander, but I think there's a few places they could go through. And say what you want about Justin Wilcox, he finds a way to go 6-6 or 5-7 sometimes. Here we go. Excuse me. Louisville at Virginia Tech is another big one. Key swing game in the middle of the season here. I do trust the Louisville system and Jeff Brom, what they've done recently, a little bit more, so I'll take them in that case. SMU at Boston College. Could Boston College pull off the upset here? Let's give it to them just because they're 3-6, and we know their thing is being mediocre as well. SMU, I think, could have just a little bit more inconsistency this year than they had last year, obviously, with that magical run. Give me Clemson at home against Florida State. Give me Miami to get revenge against Syracuse this year. Stanford at North Carolina. Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels, I think, get the home victory there. Virginia, I think, a much better team than Wake Forest this year. Cal at Louisville. So a lot of pretty straightforward games. And then Duke at UConn. I do like UConn, but I've already given Duke that weird loss to Tulane, a group of 5 loss. I don't think it's likely they lose both of those games in the non-conference, and I did just pick against Duke earlier. So I'm sorry to UConn. I guess I've slandered them quite a bit in this video unintentionally. Clemson has to travel on the road to play a team that beat them at home last year by double digits. So going to be a huge test for them. I think they get the win. I don't think this Louisville team is as good this year as they were last year. So I think Clemson comes through. Georgia Tech getting the job done on the road. Boston College won't make a bowl game. Virginia at Duke. I like Duke at home versus the Cavaliers. Virginia Tech having to travel on the road to play Florida State, a testy game. Thus far in Brent Pry's career, we've seen several opportunities for him to get a big-time signature victory to make Virginia Tech feel like they have arrived and they've gotten a big-time victory. And in this case, on the road versus Florida State, will they get it? I'm just going to go with what I've seen so far, which is Pry can't do it when it comes down to an opportunity to make a big splash. So I'm going to take Florida State. Notre Dame at Pitt. Could Pitt pull off the upset? Notre Dame, I think, is going to lose one throughout the season. They'll lose one. I don't necessarily think this is the spot where it happens. So give me them over Pitt, dropping Pitt to 6-4. NC State at Miami. Give me the Canes at home versus the Wolfpack. North Carolina travels to play Wake Forest. Maybe this is a spot where it happens. Why not? Let's give Wake Forest their first conference win. Maybe Bill Belichick isn't able to coach this roster up well enough to be ready for the weirdness that college football can bring. Poor Delaware. I picked Wake Forest because Delaware registered in my head as a FCS opponent. They're not. It's a fun game we have on the schedule here, but I still do like Wake Forest there. Florida State travels on the road to play NC State. Big-time home game for the Wolfpack. I think they get the win. They upset Florida State to get 6-5. I don't think it's just going to be a crazy explosion for Florida State to just jump up and be great immediately. There's going to be some growing pains this year, but getting to a bowl game, a big positive after that 2-10 season. Pitt at Georgia Tech. Give me the Yellow Jackets as the home team led by Haynes King to get a big-time victory. Give me Virginia Tech to avenge that loss that was in controversial fashion on the Hail Mary last year, or the Fail Mary, as some might call it. Louisville at SMU, another massive swing game potentially, especially looking on paper at the start of the year. Give me SMU as the home team to get the victory, dropping both of those teams to 4 losses. I think it could get ugly in terms of just the battle and the carnage that happens at the top of the conference. Give me North Carolina to bounce back with the home victory over Duke. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit. Give me Notre Dame over Syracuse as the home team. And then we got Cal at Stanford, a rivalry game. Still a big game, even though both these teams might have a rough year. I'll take Cal in this case, playing for a little bit more, less turmoil. At least they have a real head coach. Stanford has an interim head coach in Frank Reich. So that takes us to rivalry week, the last week of the season. Some big games in here. You know, we got Georgia Tech. Last year, Georgia Tech took them to 8 overtimes. This year is at a neutral site in Atlanta, and I think anything could happen. And I think based off of what you already saw, it could be pretty likely Georgia Tech wins this. I honestly can't remember if I picked Georgia in my SEC video, but I don't care. I'm picking Georgia Tech. I love this team so much. I love the chip they play with on their shoulder. I don't care what the spread is in this game, how many losses Georgia Tech has. Give me the Yellow Jackets to win. Give me Wake Forest to get absolutely splattered by Duke. North Carolina at NC State. This one could be a battle. I've got a North Carolina team at 7-4. Let's say Bill Belichick's squad pulls out a rivalry victory. It's been a while since the Tar Heels won that one. That would be big for the program. Gets North Carolina to 8-4. NC State still makes a bowl, though. Miami at Pitt. Another kind of testy game late in the year. And you know what? Mario Cristobal's teams have really struggled in November. He is 4-8 in the month of November as a head coach. And in this case, I believe these games are in the month of November, so this would drop him to like 5-10 or 6-10. Hey, I'm just going off of what I've seen so far. Give me Syracuse at home to become bowl eligible. Notre Dame travels to play Stanford. I don't think Stanford's disease will travel that far this year to beat Notre Dame. SMU at Cal. Give me SMU to get to win number 8. Florida State, I don't think is upsetting Florida this year. Virginia Tech should continue their dominance of Virginia. Even though Virginia's having a great year, I think they'll be in a great spot. Give me the Hokies. Kentucky at Louisville. I think Louisville gets another one. 2 in a row now versus Kentucky. And then we have Clemson at South Carolina, where I rocked with the Gamecocks in my SEC picks, and I think I'm going to rock with them here at home recently. They've just kind of had Clemson's number. They've been able to get the Tigers and drag them down in the mud, even when they're not as talented, not as good, and they could literally be better than Clemson this year. Clemson, I think, is a great team. Obviously, if we look over here at the final standings, I've got them and Georgia Tech in the ACC title game, and then just a cluster of contenders: Miami, Duke, SMU, Pitt, all with 3 conference losses. I think I gave Pitt 2 non-conference losses according to this. Yeah, Notre Dame and West Virginia. That makes sense. And then we've got North Carolina, Louisville, 2 teams I'm also higher on, getting at 8 wins. And I honestly think this order from 2 to like even 9 all the way down to Virginia Tech, it could go anywhere. I mean, any of those teams. This is a cluster past Clemson. I really like Georgia Tech for some of the intangibles, but I could totally understand why somebody would like Louisville enough to put them in there, or North Carolina, or Pitt even, or SMU. So this is not a like multi-layered conference where you're super far off from contention if you're not in the top tier. I think 2 through 9 are all in that just second crowded tier trying to break in to the ACC title game and then have a shot at making the playoffs. Outside of that, we've got Syracuse and Florida State, Virginia, NC State all making bowl games. I think that would be considered a success for all 4 of those programs this year, especially a team like Virginia, a program like Virginia, where it's been a while. And then Cal, I've got just missing out in a bowl game there, ending the season with that loss to SMU. This is pretty realistic as to how their season might go. Stanford, Boston College, Wake Forest, also missing bowl games. If there was a team I was too harsh to in this, it might have been Boston College, because we all know what they do. They go 6-6, and that's about it. So maybe you give them a win over Stanford instead of losing that, and then like, I don't know, a win over like Michigan State, and then they're 6-6 and all is right with the universe, because that's, like I said, that's what they do. But if you don't do that, there's a lot of other things you could do. I honestly like how these picks turned out. Maybe you give Georgia Tech that loss to Georgia or something like that to be more realistic or something. But I think this could happen. So this, I think, accurately reflects my picks. You have to let me know down in the comments. Do you think I'm rage baiting you? What do you think about the picks I made and all that good stuff? And that's it for the power conferences. So you'll have to let me know down in the comments if I should just do one group of 5 video where I just tackle all the conferences at once, or if you want to see them individually, because I'm down to do that as well and go through. They've got that on here. But thank you guys so much for watching. That is all I have for today. Hopefully I'll get out another long-form video later this week. And in that case, I will see you guys later this week.